Okay, so let's call to order the Central Oregon Community College Board of Directors work session for Wednesday, November 12th, 2025. Okay, so first up in this work session, we are going to take some time to review the president's bits, and we have President Ferreira here to present them to us.
All right, jump right in. So a few goals that I set based on the feedback that I heard from this group and as part of the interview process. First and foremost is to build culture. That to me falls under the student-ready college part of the strategic plan. I'll talk about the alignment just because I think that's probably important to know that we're not getting outside of the alignment that we already have. So to me, I think there are two measurable outcomes that really come with that. One is to pilot an expanded senior leadership team that includes faculty and classified staff. The second is to meet with, and I'm going to add, or at least attempt to meet with, all full-time staff and faculty in one-on-one meetings. I mentioned at least attempt to, because obviously if someone really doesn't want to, I would not force them to do so. The second thing would be post-COVID cleanup, which falls under college sustainability and the long-term sustainability of the college. The measurable outcome on that would be to develop a college-wide plan to assess and address inefficient processes and procedures. So a tall order that will take some work, but we'll get a plan in place to start working on that, pending your approval. Third, community engagement. So under the community engagement part of the strategic plan alignment, meet with at least 1/3 of community engagement partners that have been identified by the board in July of 2025, and join a minimum of 2 boards within the community to again serve in a leadership capacity outside of just the college. And then finally, long-term vision, which I believe falls under access and the strategic plan alignment. So select a signature program for the Prineville campus, as we have been trying to do and are making great progress on, and then expand COCC's partnership with LaPine High School. So some intentional steps long-term in the community. And that's the draft I'm presenting today.
Are we going to go through them one? I'm sorry.
Yes. Yes.
Are we going to go through them one at a time, or should I jump in with the question about any of them?
I think you can just jump in.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Under community engagement, is it practical for you during this first year when you are trying to meet folks both out in the community and here to do 2 organizations in the community? I'm not trying to decide this for you. I would just think about the fact that you are going to be really busy. I don't want you to feel like stretched, but then also you might find after being here for a year or so, something that really hits your fancy. And then you're like, wow, but I don't have capacity because I've already joined 2 things. Right. So anyway, so I wouldn't judge. All I'm saying is I wouldn't judge you if you decided to make that one with a goal of adding another one in a year or 2.
Thank you for that. And you're absolutely right. I think one of the challenges is that COCC's president has been on at least 2 of those boards moving forward. So the 2 that come to mind are EDCO and the Better Together board. So we sort of have a permanent seat, at least on both of those, which I think I would want to continue just for continuity, so that we're not dropping the ball for something. But thanks.
Fair enough.
I have a question just regarding timeline. I mean, I know this is this year's goals. And so long-term vision, I imagine, I don't, this is a question. Do you anticipate selecting a signature program for the Prineville campus this year? No, that is going, or yes.
Actually, yeah, I think we can, or at least.
I couldn't hear the question.
Yeah, I think
Where she asked about timeline and if selecting the program, signature program for Prineville campus is if he's planning on doing it this year, or if this was like a longer term plan, like maybe by next year.
Yeah, so the answer for me is yes to both, but of course, some of the feedback we get from Prineville might impact that. So Cindy's actually here. She and the team have been doing an amazing job out there holding community listening sessions, meeting with elected officials. If the guidance from Prineville is we need more time to really assess what the long-term job market looks like, we would certainly not want to push this just for the sake of accomplishing a goal. So that's one that I would like to come back to you all with. If we find something that says the guidance from Prineville, and we're listening to our partners, is this needs more time. I would hope for some latitude on that. But our goal is we would love to identify one by the end.
Awesome. And then curious if the college-wide plan for post-COVID cleanup, if that's started.
Yes, theoretically.
I couldn't tell you
If the
that.
COVID wide, or the COVID plan has started, COVID wide. What, why am I not
Cleanup.
saying this?
Cleanup.
The cleanup, there we go.
Oh, okay.
Number two.
Yeah,
We have had informal discussions with the vice president's group. So number one is to expand that senior leadership team. Our first meeting with that senior leadership team is next week, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, next week. And so that's actually going to be one of the things I want to work with that group on, because of course it's not just my project, it's college-wide, and who better to give feedback on areas that we can assess and address inefficient processes with than staff and faculty as well. So that is the next step, that group that has broader stakeholders will help to start developing a plan around it. I think the metrics piece is going to be incredibly hard. So it's one thing to say we're going to cut inefficiency. How do we measure cut inefficiency? Is it hours? Is it dollars? Is it positions? It'll kind of be all of the above. So there's a lot of work. That is the hardest one. It will take quite a bit of work.
That's what I was wondering if, again, just like being a realist with time.
Yeah.
If having that plan, it's a good goal, but to have it done by the end of the year, it's a big
I think as long as the goal is to have a plan, it's doable. If the goal was to start implementing that plan, I don't think it would be doable. But I think I think it's realistic that by July 1, we could say, here's how we're going to do it and have a starting.
Thank you.
so I'm sorry, I probably haven't read everything I should have read, going on the weekly updates. So are you adding to the senior leadership team, or do you have two groups now, or what?
Yeah, thanks. It's a really good question. I'll continue to meet with the vice presidents every week. So before I started, I actually reached out to Kyle to say, I think long-term, the senior leadership team will be an expanded group. So since I started, we actually call that VP meeting a VP meeting, and it serves the purpose of meeting with those VPs.
Got it.
And then this expanded group will meet once a month for the first year, but we're certainly opening to changing that pilot or looking at other times.
And so, remind me who will be on that?
It will be Amy Harper, who represents our faculty senate, and a representative from the Classified Association to be determined permanently. And so Scott Dove, who's the current president, is coming to the first one, but then he thought it would probably be somebody else long-term after that. So the one other piece we have is that a lot of the language we have as a college, where you see SLT, it really refers to vice presidents.
Yeah.
And so we have a big language cleanup we're gonna have to do. So there might be an interim name that we use, because even like in the collective bargaining agreements, it says senior leadership team and SLT. So where Amy joked, we'll call it like, SALT or something like that, new SLT, something until we get language cleaned up. But that's
You said Amy, who was the second person?
well, they're gonna come up with a permanent person. Scott Dove is the current, the Classified Association.
Got it. Thanks.
And so Scott Dove is the president currently, and so he'll come to the first meeting, and then he said that they would determine who the long-term representative.
Got it. And y'all will meet Scott and for the classified folks are gonna be here for public comment.
Yeah, he'll be here too.
Greg, you sent out the vision
Mhm.
earlier this year. That is a bold one and very inspiring. And I'm wondering how you follow up on that within your goals this year, and whether there is supplemental places where that goal or that vision shows up on the campus or in our conversations, and how whether that is something we would want to add into your goals around promoting that vision, whether it's collaborations with Lucas and marketing or other ways, but to see that as our, a big top line.
North Star.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question and feedback. So in particular, the concept of COCC as a first choice college has been very well received. And so we get a ton of feedback on that from both faculty, staff, and community members. So we don't want to lose that. We're working it in now to a couple things that we're doing as a college, but it is not specifically in this, and it absolutely could be, because it is something that we don't want to lose sight of. You know, a lot of pieces that are gonna come up today in the work session and board meeting as a whole are things that we sort of have to find consensus and resolution on before I think we can somewhat get to that point. So I think as long as we know that sort of that's gonna be sequential too, we've got to clean things up, find some resolution on other things. But I'm sure we could find a way to work it in.
Can I have something?
Yes,
So under long-term vision for expand COCC's partnership with Lapine High School.
Mhm.
I know that we're listing these as measurable outcomes, but like, how would we show that?
Mhm.
I guess, do we probably don't want to be too specific because we're not sure what it will look like, because we gotta investigate what might work.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And Lapine as a whole seemed pretty broad, so I didn't want it to be so broad that we couldn't make progress on it. Scott and I work really well together, and so we tried to roll out the automotive program just this last term. It hit a snag because students at the high school are allowed to take a 0 period now for their first period, and we were offering it first period. And it turns out students would rather not come to school than take the program.
High school students,
Which
Go figure.
I too was a high school student. I get it. But
but
if
the mornings are hard.
yeah, I was
Mornings
gonna
are
say,
hard.
can I not take first period anymore?
Yeah,
That's for some of the high school students.
it's a little different. So like, so in theory, we could have said, hey, we're gonna add another CTE program at Lapine High School. But if the logistics make that difficult, I also don't want it to be that we just stop.
Got it.
You know, it could be that we do more outreach to the high school, that we are sending recruiters there on a more frequent basis, that we're taking part in more of their activities. And so my
Okay.
vision is sort of that we will track the work that we're doing and measure it against what we've done in the past, just to make sure that we
Okay.
are showing in good faith that we are
I
putting
didn't
together.
want it to be too amorphous, right?
Yeah. I'm with you.
I mean, it's sort of like, the idea of a signature program for Prineville. I mean, I would still call it success if we somehow determined, that we're gonna do, that it's not necessarily a signature program, but it's something else that's gonna work for the community.
Yeah.
So I guess it's kind of the same thing. Okay,
Signature program could be adaptive changing programs every 3 years based on what we know,
yeah, who knows, right? We don't know what we don't know.
Right.
Would it be
So-
too much to say expand this partnership with Pine High School and develop a longer term plan for engagement with South County? Just that noting that we would have I know we've been assessing opportunities there for a little while without knowing quite what that longer term plan could be.
Sure.
And for us to be thinking about it as a multi-year investment of collaboration, that would be a hope, maybe. It doesn't have to be a lot to understand,
Sure.
just to have a bit of a knowing that we're building.
I think it probably depends on what the plan would be and look like. And I only say that because, going back to we don't know what we don't know yet. So this first year, if we can really make some inroads into the high school to see what works, what the community grabs onto, what parents come to learn about, that will really help to inform what we're doing. So to me, it's kind of like this year is the sampling a bunch of different things to see what sticks, where we're going to find traction. And then in the second year, it's building a plan around what we found. So, hey, this was successful. How do we now expand it and really create a plan around it? So I am completely with you from a 2-year lens of building that plan. I just don't know that we will have that by, June 31st or June 30th. That would be my only concern. But maybe we will. I mean, we're going to learn more as the year goes on.
I'm very grateful that it's in your list.
Yeah.
I don't think we've heard from Alan or Joe yet. Alan, do you have anything you'd like to add?
No, I think what you've been talking about is great, and to give wiggle room is a great idea, and I think we're on the right track.
Thank you, Alan. Joe? You might just be able to listen. Erin Mers, is there anything else you would like to ask or add?
I don't think so. I did have the same thought as Aaron regarding the first choice school, but I also very much understand why it's not in here at this point. But that was my only other thought. Otherwise, I feel like they're great.
I am comfortable adding that as a long-term vision piece, as long as it has some latitude, like, you know, build a campaign around it or build messaging around it. I mean, if that satisfies what we're thinking, I'm happy to take that on.
I don't even know if it needs to be that specific, but something in the long-term vision category that feels like the right fit.
Okay.
Yeah, because it's exciting.
Harry.
Okay.
Just to make sure, Laura, is there anything else you would like to add? Okay,
I
thank
am
you.
covered, thank you.
Erin Foot-Morgan?
I like these goals.
Good.
They're all spot on. I just want to make sure we're not reaching too far in the first. You're in the middle of culture change. Sure. I've been where you're at. Okay, so and I want to make sure you still have a life besides that.
Yeah.
That's right.
I appreciate it.
You know, and not the overreach. It's a lot to take on. We're in the most challenging probably environment and, well, for sure, and this, yeah. Development.
I appreciate that.
I mean, that's the only thing we can't put on here quite is our goal is to navigate some very difficult waters, you know. We don't know where to put that. We don't know what it would be. But just knowing that you have we know that that is the very significant portion of your life.
Certainly.
Almost survive.
Yeah, survive. You put our budget. in
I don't
that.
know if we're dramatic, but it's just.
Yeah.
Be with us to set goals next year.
That's a
please.
good goal.
Yes.
That's a good goal.
Survive.
We'll add that under long-term vision. Be there to set again.
Yeah.
Hey.
Oh, Joe Quinn, it's Chad, he's driving, so, well, he said he'll be here at 5, so thank you, Joe, stay safe.
Thanks, Joe.
I appreciate that very much. I really do. I think that all of these are doable and they don't concern me. The only one that I think is tricky is the post-COVID cleanup. So that one we'll see as we get into, just because that's huge and different in every single department and area. So thank you. And if at some point in the year, it seems like that one might have to wait just because of the current dynamics of what's going on, I would love to reach back out and have that discussion.
Well, I can't even say it. When I tried to say it earlier, I couldn't say it. So, you know, if you want to take that one off, no, just joking. Okay, so anything else before we move on from this agenda item? Okay. So then we'll move on to a review of the board goals. So there are some notes from our retreat with Mary Spieldy. And in those on page 3 and 4 were the board goals that we drafted. So we discussed number 1, onboarding and setting up the new president for success. Number 2, oh, check.
Nailed it.
Okay, good. 2, ongoing professional learning for the board. 3, community outreach. And then 4, return to regular policy review. And then additionally, on page 5, Mary had recommended that we do a number of things. So 1, board roles and responsibility. So talking a little bit more about that. 2, to talk more about the board president relationship. 3, talk about communication protocols. 4, strategic priorities and expectations for the president, which will constitute his work plan on which he will be evaluated. And 5, defining what support of the president looks like. And we did do almost all of these within the board retreat. So going back to those 4 board goals, how do we feel about them now? Would we like to add anything? Do you feel that these are appropriate for this year?
I'd like some clarification or more specificity on ongoing professional learning for the board.
Yes, and we talked about that in the advocacy committee. So I. We had talked about it first in the retreat and talking about attending conferences and trainings that are available. And then we've also in the advocacy committee discussed.
And we also talked about bringing training to the board, like when you
Yes.
get
Right.
trained on, when like
The
Christie's. got trained.
DEI training.
Right, yeah, yes, of course, because we talked about media training and advocacy training in the advocacy committee. I just didn't know if there were maybe sub goals. I would love to see another DEI training this year, if there was like specific pieces we're trying to achieve. But maybe we don't need to define that right now.
Or we can talk about it and then come back with a draft of the goals and then solidify them. Then next meeting. So we could definitely add a DEI training. We had talked about in the advocacy committee, advocacy training and also media training.
I would like to toss out, I think that we ought to get some AI. Because that was something that became very clear to me from the ACCT, that if we are not up to date, I mean, we don't necessarily need to be able to do all the things that someone who teaches at COCC or works at COCC needs to do. But we need to understand AI and particularly its limits and its biases. Because it'll be incumbent upon us as things change to change policies for the college, so. Those are pretty compelling sessions that are several.
Yeah, I think, just noting those trainings would be great. I think, when I think about, professional development around advocacy, I wonder, the only other goal that I wondered about was specifically noting that we were hoping to engage the board in more advocacy opportunities. So training, but then also providing clear opportunities for advocacy when appropriate.
And that can kind of go under community outreach, right?
Yeah.
The training sort of under two and the outcome or the results out of under
Yeah.
three.
Okay. Any other thoughts, questions? Ideas? We are returning to regular policy review.
Mhm. We are.
It's nice to write your goals after you already started the work.
We just had a sneak peek at the.
Okay, so given, and I actually believe we could achieve these this year. It just is a matter of scheduling and coordinating with the board. So if we are committed, we can find a way to make this happen. And that would be another, DEI inclusion, belonging type training. The advocacy, the media, and then we'll need to source an AI training most likely. Okay. So we will update the draft and then bring it back to the next board meeting. And hopefully we can all agree. And then in the meantime, we'll continue to work on these as we are. Okay, so I'll move to the next agenda item, which is the board calendar for 2025-26.
Sorry,
Yes,
can we go back, under ongoing professional learning for the board?
yes.
Could we add, because we already have it sort of anticipated, and I think it's it's spot on, and this way we remember that we did it. We're gonna get a little bit more education and involvement in the budgeting. You know, like we're gonna have the check-in on the
Yeah.
budget with Michael, and he's gonna try to help us delve a little bit deeper into understanding what it is that we're looking at, and what it means. And since we already know we're gonna do that, and I think that does count as training, good idea to just kind of note it there.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Laura.
Now I apologize. Thank you.
We're ahead of schedule, so if anybody wants to jump back at any point, feel free. Okay, so we have the draft board calendar. It starts in July, which is our academic year. Would we like to walk through it together, or would people like just some time to read and then add any thoughts or questions?
We could potentially add on under for February, the ACCT National, I think it's legislative, yeah, conference.
Yeah.
Erica, you have my list of questions and comments. I'm happy to run through them whenever
Yeah, that'd be
is
great, Erin.
appropriate.
If you'd like to jump in, that'd be great.
Okay, great. The first one, I just had a question about the calendar generally. I'm not sure if this is something that existed or if you created it, but kind of comparing and contrasting it to the one that exists in our policies. So that was my first question. This feels maybe like a little more internal operational since it's a lot of to do. I don't see us publishing this as is, but like, is that accurate that this is not replacing the calendar that's currently in our policies? Okay.
No, this is more, yeah, of an internal document to keep us on track during the year.
Okay, great. So with that, we've been sharing committee appointments in September rather than July. It just felt like too much
Good catch.
too soon. So that was one note. And then to add, which is in our policy calendar, that the new chair consults each board member regarding preferred committee assignments. That happens in July or August. So just adding it to this as a to-do. Third, we committed earlier this year to scheduling retreat dates further in advance. So I wonder, we have in here plan fall retreat, plan summer retreat, but I wonder if it's worth adding, select dates for fall retreat, summer retreat far enough in advance.
Just to be more specific.
Yeah, I think so. I guess that's a question that's not for me to answer. It's a question for the board. How do people feel about that? As just adding it to a to-do.
I am always grateful for earlier, if we can. I don't know if that's something we can even do in October or something, beginning of the year.
Mhm.
Well, to that point, this is Alan. We have had the hardest time figuring out how we could all come together at the same time. And Kyle's been doing calendar things off all the time. And so it's hard. So the more we try to do it, the better it'll be. And this year we were trying to do a little workshop before school started, before Greg was going to sit down and kind of talk to personnel, staff, and everybody. Do we need to be thinking about that each year, or does Greg think that's necessary? And the point of that was to help him say, here, this is what the board thinks, or supports what I'm saying.
For the retreats specifically, or just the ongoing meetings?
I was just thinking of the one that is before September, or in September, just so it was like, well, here's some things I've heard from the board, and this is what I'm telling you as you do your opening of the academic year and talk with faculty, everybody.
I don't know. What have we done historically? Is that a normal board retreat that we have, or was that just added this year?
I thought it was just added this year, but I don't know. I don't know if it's has a lot of value to do that or not, or it could be you do it as you need it.
Well, if we want to do the
Right.
additional trainings too, we need the time to do that, so that time could be helpful for that as well. I'm open.
Right, did we do it earlier because we wanted to meet with you, Greg, as a group before school started? So I think that the September was earlier than I think we normally do it.
Gotcha.
Okay.
I think it's dependent on the year.
Okay,
Yeah. And years ago, we only had one retreat per year and it was 2 days long. We can do whatever we would like to.
Yes, we can.
We can design our own future. So I guess, was it helpful to have it that early? In the school year?
Sure. It's really up to you all. I'm open.
It's historically, it's been a function of how can we, when can we get people's calendars aligned?
Yes.
My reason I go back 2 days from now.
No, let's do
Yeah.
one,
Yeah.
let's do them
Spread
more,
out.
yeah, spread out and one day at a time. There's a benefit to doing them in September, but there's also like when new board members come on board, a benefit to doing them earlier in July.
True.
August is a hard month to schedule in. Do we have any feelings about for our July retreats?
I just never know from year to year.
What it looks like?
Yeah, not
Yeah.
until, like March or April. Right.
And then there's also, it's nice to have a little bit of flexibility on if we do one during a quarter or we do a couple, if it's a full day versus a half day, just depending on what issues are coming up, what we'd like to cover.
I mean, I don't think we need to plan on more than two, but always be flexible to add more as needed,
That's what I was
Yes.
gonna say, too,
right?
as issues come up.
Mhm. Okay, so at least two. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Alignment.
I think July is nice when there are new board members coming on.
No, I agree.
To shoot for it.
Right.
And then that sets us up to take August off, and then once the president goes straight into the school year in September,
As long as we just keep flexibility to know that sometimes it may need to be August, depending on folks' schedules.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
You can
Mhm.
target July.
okay, yeah. So it's 6 months after, is that January? What's the other retreat? Do we want to try to have them every 6 months, or do we not want to commit to when the second is?
Actually, like the idea of having one in January, February, because it's so hard to do November and December.
Yes.
Those are just ugly months.
Yes, sir, I agree.
In fact, can we just vote to exclude December? Let's just cut it off the calendar. Never mind.
I don't think we have that power.
Frankie.
I don't know that that's in our policies.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
okay, I had two more things, thanks. The next one was that I like that the seat candidates for next chair, vice chair, I like to see that that's on here, and I just asked for a slight tweak of words, which probably doesn't matter for this instance, but to change it to something like solicit interest for next chair and vice chair, rather than the current way that it's written.
I like that.
Thanks. And then finally, president's evaluation in our current calendar starts in April rather than it's listed March here. And maybe that's doesn't matter, but it feels important that the calendars are aligned.
Are
And
you
we-
looking at the calendar that's in our board policies?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
we probably need to update that, because I think we decided to try to move it up to March because we were
Okay.
getting pushed and delayed, so that's a good
Yeah.
call. We need to fix it in our. Yeah.
Okay. Great. That's it for me. Thank you.
I'll put that down will you put that down as a note for the policy committee, just to propose the revision, Kyle, to mine, please? We should probably look at the other, did you look at the other dates? Are we good, Aaron, on the other dates?
I tried to do a direct compare and contrast. I think I caught everything.
Thank you.
Can do it one more time, but
Laura, would you mind repeating that?
Sure, we're gonna
Yeah.
look at the calendar that's in the board policies and just make sure that it's consistent with this.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is Alan.
Yes.
So when I look at the calendar, I don't see things that deal with budget. And so, maybe even though that's the budget committee and it's not maybe, I don't know. I just don't see anything on budget. And we do have budget and audit and we have those meetings. Maybe they should be on there somewhere.
they're in there.
I'm really glad you said that, Alan, because I think December is when Michael's gonna bring us the check-in on the budget, right? We should probably add that.
And then it's also in there May, June. It's in there several times, but that mid-year check-in, that new mid-year one is not. I don't think.
Okay, any other comments or additions to the calendar? Okay, so now that we've looked at the calendar, we have the known board agenda topics that are listed. Are there any additions we'd like to make? Either into the calendar or just as a request for this year?
ASCOCC presentations. I don't think we've decided that and maybe it's not necessarily like a structured cadence. That was a question too I actually have for the advocacy committee meeting later on, but I don't know if that needs to be reflected in here or not. Maybe too specific.
I know the goal internally is to have them present at least once in each term. One of the challenges though is the scheduling of it, mainly because we also sort of rotate as the board and support. So we were gonna have that presentation last month, but the individual was like, oh, I can't make it to La Pine, I don't have transportation. So if we put it on a specific month and then there's transportation issues or finals or something like that, it sort of throws that a bit. So we might just want to put a placeholder somewhere of, setting the goal of inviting that individual to come at least once a term. But it is hard, I think, to put specific time frame on a calendar.
Yeah, what if we were to put a footnote to the calendar or something that just described a couple of items that we know we want regularly every year?
Yes.
ASCOCC being one, and I'm sitting here trying to think of what some of the others are, and my little squirrel brain's looking at shiny things instead, but I think there's some things that we want every year.
I think status of student success efforts would be an every year thing, possibly a check-in from Christy on some of the activities of her department or her work. We talked through we looked at some information and data about programs in our retreat, and that's probably pretty helpful, whether it's in a retreat setting or meeting.
So that's ongoing.
Yeah.
definitely from hearing from the Center for Business, formerly CBI XYZ.
Have we changed the name?
Yes, I believe so.
To what?
Center for Business, CB.
Love it.
Wow.
Can't tell you how much I love it.
Yeah.
We're trying not to use.
Center
Love
for
it.
Center for Business.
Love that.
Awesome.
Mhm. Yeah. Mhm.
Great.
And can we, like, give you, since this is all gonna come back to us next month, can we, like, as we think of things over the
Yes.
next couple of weeks, can we?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
I mean, we do naturally do these check-ins on each campus when we go and visit them, but of course noting that we would want to check in on each branch campus.
Yeah, including, Deer Ridge.
Absolutely.
And like, we usually, most years get an update, and I think it's a good thing on like student services in the res hall.
Yeah.
Cause there's lots of things that change and exciting things that happen, and it's kind of nice for us to know about those things.
Mhm.
Great. Okay. So we've made it through our agenda. With 13 minutes to spare. Efficient. Is there anything else for the good of the order before we adjourn? Okay, and any other thoughts, questions, comments, please follow up and email and we'll talk about it before. And then we'll bring these to the next meeting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I-
Thank you all for taking the time to meet earlier.
It's really helpful.
I have
Okay.
one more thing, so maybe to add to the kind of running list, basic needs, services, like developments that are happening there, whether it's on campus or collaboration in the community around services.
And foundation,
Oh, foundation, yeah, good call.
we usually get an update, after the middle of the year, but usually sometime during the year, there's some
Yeah.
other thing, and it's.
Scholarships and
And we
such.
should stay in touch with them annually, regularly, so, I mean, I know we have a liaison, but.
Yeah.
I'm gonna count to 10.
You what?
I'm gonna count to 10.
Oh. But wait.
Anything else we'd like to add? Okay, thank you all for your time and I'll